Welcome back to Up in the Blue Seats, your favorite Rangers podcast from the New York Post. It's Mollie Walker, Larry Brooks, and Brian Boyle, as always. And it's our end of the season episode, and we have plenty to get to. But before we do, can I just be the first to say finally? Finally, it's over. Honestly, there has never been a more painful season in my whole career, which I know is all of 5 minutes. But it was truly some of the toughest times the last 6 months. And I know a lot of people feel the same way, both fans, people in the organization, all over. I mean, Larry, your career has been a little bit longer than 5 minutes. You've touched on this a bit too, but where did this season rank among the dysfunction you've seen in your time on the job?
It was the least enjoyable team that I've ever covered. From, dysfunction within the organization to curtailed access to players, not being available at numerous times. And I don't want to put this on the Rangers alone. That's the way the culture has grown across the NHL. But from start to finish, there was a vibe from the first day of training camp when Jacob Trouba held his opening press conference, and it's amazing how this season, at the end of the season, was just as much about Jacob Trouba as the start of the season was, at least as the Rangers talked about it on their breakup day Monday. It was the team never got traction. It was a miserable experience covering this team. Miserable. And I've covered worse teams, not very many, but a few. But there were some there were more redeeming features on those teams. Even I'm talking about generally the teams from 97 to 2004. They missed the playoffs 7 straight years. You knew they were just mercenaries running in here for the money, but there was something almost honest about that. They were just coming in for the money. Guys who never would have had any interest in playing in New York. They were bribed, and it was the organization's fault. They were just bribing players to come, who otherwise wouldn't have. Mike Keane is one. They bribed him to come to New York, and from Colorado. He was miserable his first half year. He played poorly, and then he went to Dallas and won a cup, and then picked up his career. But there were more redeeming features to those teams because at least they stood up for themselves. They did. They stood up for themselves. This team just turtled, went into the fetal position immediately when any adversity struck, when there was discomfort in the room. It's the most sensitive group I've ever been around. And I've written this so many times and have talked about it so many times, but those were the 20, 24, 25 Rangers, and they will always have this place in my heart.
Igor Shesterkin said he felt like something broke during the season and just went the other way. Brian, you were a little bit more removed from it than we were, but just what was your perception of the season as a whole?
I don't know how many times I said they were broken during the course of the year, but I agree with Igor and I agree with Larry. That I've been doing this shorter than both of you, not very long at all. And the last year where I got to work the network to cover the games, it was a lot of fun. And when something went wrong, it was fixed. And there was deficiencies, yeah. And they got exposed to a Stanley Cup winning team, in June. And they continually got exposed from the start of the season on. And to Larry's point, this is a soft hockey team. And that's not what you want to be called. It's the worst thing you could say. But to further Larry's other point, there's zero personality on the team. You talk about the 97 to 04 teams. You get guys coming in here that had careers. They were names for a reason. They had personality. And I know the landscape was different in terms of how there was connection with the writers and the interviews and whatnot. You could say more. There wasn't social media. I understand why they're sort of gone down this road of trying to protect or whatever. But this is an entertainment business. You need to be able to have some sort of access, even when you give the stock answer as a player that you always give, because you don't want to have bulletin board material. You want to stay humble. You don't want to give another team or anybody else any information. They just bottled it up. And maybe that's frustrating for some players too. I know DeHaan just wanted to say what he wanted to say quick and then be done with it. It blew up into something bigger because PR said, don't say anything. Mollie, you're there, I believe.
Yep. one of two.
Yeah.
One of two.
Right.
And we can get into that for sure.
And it's like, you just made it worse. Like,
Yeah.
let's just be honest. I don't know. As a little kid, it's like, if you did something wrong, come clean, get it done, figure it, address it. Everybody's walking on eggshells there.
I think I've told this story. I think I've talked about this before. But when I was the PR person for the Devils, we our opening training camp meeting, I would speak at it and talk to the players. And again, it was a different environment, but the point I stressed was that players need that if you're going to be in front of your locker after you score a hat trick, you need to be in front of your locker if you turn the puck over in the final minute and the team loses the game because of that. And I said that every writer respects players who are there and take accountability because they'll always get the benefit of the doubt. And so, and again, that was not unique to me. That was not unique to my experience. That was not unique to the policies we were instituting the Devils when they came from Colorado. That was kind of a standard.
Right.
But now teams rush to protect any player who has been involved in a controversial incident during a game, or has turned the puck over in the final minute, or gave up a bad goal, or took a bad penalty. These players are not available, and sometimes they're not available because there are optional practices and off days. Sometimes they're not available for 3 or 4 days, and then the issue is the issue has been forgotten. And to me, and I would never say that players are not accountable, because they don't have to be accountable to me. They have to be accountable to their teammates and to their coach and to the organization. But the lack of public accountability to me is startling, because these are this is what these athletes have grown up with, accountability, right? And now they're being shielded all the time from having to talk about it. And again, it's my view, but I don't think it helps a team. I don't think it helps.
You are 100% right. And look, it's not even what we say. And now I'm a player again, so just walk with me for a second. It's not what we would say to you guys either. It's not just that. It's in the room when the doors are shut. You have 5 minutes after a game, and I'm sitting there after I lose a draw against Washington in the playoffs, saying, Ovi comes across, and then there's a play, and it's late in the game, and they score a tie, and we lose an over, whatever. I take full responsibility for that loss. Like I let the boys down. I feel terrible about it because I let them down, and then they pick me up. It's not like, well, in the first period, this guy could have passed to me, or you win some draws, you lose some draws. No, like that's when it mattered. These are the things that you have to be open enough and close enough as a group to say, like, that's on me. That one was on me. That is not acceptable. I expect more from myself. You guys expect more from me. And then, you guys come in, you ask about the game. No one's burying someone else. No one's saying, yeah, we just need to figure it out and blah, blah, blah. No, and then if you come to me, I say, I lost the draw with 4 minutes left. We're up a goal, then it's tied, we lose in overtime. I win the draw like I'm supposed to do because I'm not scoring in bunches. Like, whatever it is, whatever your role is, you have to be able to do it. And your team, you're not going to be perfect every night. But you can't be so hypersensitive that if you make a mistake, you don't address it. Like, get harder. Physically, mentally, everything. It's a hard league to play in. And if this is the way they want to go and we need more communication with management, I don't know what Glenn Sather's doing ever. I don't what Coach, tell me what to do, and then I'll go and try and do that. You want to give me more stuff, what we're going to do in the salary cap next year, or how are we going to trade this guy and bring this guy out? That's not your job. Your job is to play center ice and score goals and be a power play guy. And you're a leader. You wear a letter on this team. We know what I'm talking about now. It doesn't matter what management is doing. You can't worry about that. Worry about your teammates, and that's it. What the coach is telling you to do, and that is it. That's all you can worry about because it's hard enough.
Louder
Mollie,
for the people in the back.
Mollie, you want to fill in the blanks here?
Louder for the people in the back. No, I mean, we and moving along here because we have plenty to get to, but obviously we knew that heads were going to roll for this season, and the first two did on Saturday. Peter Laviolette is out as head coach, which wasn't a surprise at all. I think this has been the expectation since December, honestly. Associate coach Phil Housley was also let go, but assistants Dan Muse and Michael Pekka will have an opportunity to be interviewed to remain on staff. Only coaching staff members who are going to be retained are goalie coach Jeff Malcolm and skills coach Christian Humura. I'm not surprised that Muse and Pekka have a chance to say. You could tell by the way that the players talk about them. They absolutely love them. I mean, Muse also coached Perot with USA Hockey, and Pekka really deserves a lot of credit for how he's helped the team improve on faceoffs. And I think that Pekka's been like a name that's gone around as a potential head coach in the future too. So, but if we analyze Laviolette, 94-56-11 record, a franchise record, 114 points, and a conference final finish in season 1, and then an 85-point campaign into missing the playoffs in season 2. Sounds a lot like Gerard Gallant, if you ask me. 99, 46, and 19 through his 2 seasons. That's 110 points and a conference final finish in year 1, and a 107 points and a first-round exit in year 2. Brian, did you feel this was a necessary move for the Rangers, and why?
Yeah, I like Peter Laviolette a lot, and he's a fiercely loyal guy. Maybe to his demise. Now, I never played for Howie. I never really had a lot, but interaction with him. But I haven't seen a ton of development on the back end with Phil Housley. I know he was with Lavi in Nashville before he got the head job in Buffalo. We all know what's happened in Buffalo the last decade and a half. So can't really put that on him. But yeah, you have to take responsibility when you are the head coach. If things go that way, it's sort of on you. And he's a great man. I really, really think Peter Laviolette's a good man. But when you can't accomplish what you're supposed to, it's just, yeah, you get fired. That's the league. This is an adult league, and there's a lot of money involved. If you can't do it, then they're going to find somebody who can. If the players cared about him, they would have played better. If he could have gotten maybe a little bit more creative or demanding, or cracked the whip, honestly. Like, I thought a lot of their problems from a on-ice perspective were easily visible and easily correctable with a different sort of maybe a discipline, because they're non-negotiables. Stopping in your D zone and finishing, stick position in your D zone. You can't be that good at a penalty kill and not be good defensively. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And sort of their scheme offensively, they caused themselves a lot of problems by not playing a more simplistic north-south game. We've talked about it 100 times. They were lateral and trying to find space. And when you're big name guys who make all the money just go away for months at a time, the head coach is going to get fired.
Yeah. this is a very difficult team to coach, and there were a lot of challenges entering the season. But I don't think that Peter adjusted to the environment that was so different than the year before. And, it was very similar to Gallant. They just turned off Gallant. They just turned off of him. Suddenly he wasn't a good enough coach for them. I'm not sure it was exactly the same with Laviolette, but there was resistance to him from the start. And I don't know why. Honestly, I just don't know why. It's a strange brew in that room, or it had been a strange brew for a while. And talented, obviously, a lot of marquee guys, but something missing in the core. And I don't mean only the core of the team. I mean the core of their heart. And so it was a challenge for Laviolette from the start, but I don't think he responded to it well.
Yeah.
As Brian, you allude to his loyalty. He was the loyalty though is to the team, right? The loyalty has to be to the organization. It has to be to the group. It can't be to one player or two players. It can't be to a cast of veterans who are not performing when there are kids who are chomping at the bit to get more opportunity. And I think he became very stubborn as the season evolved. I think he actually coached to his reputation of not being a great coach for younger players. And it just fell in. It just all fell in on him. I don't think he was their biggest problem.
No.
But he was not a solution. There was no, he had no solutions. And, as far as they're on ice, they didn't defend from game one. Game one. I mean, honestly, we've talked about this before, but the first 10 minutes of the season in Pittsburgh were chaos in their own end. And it kind of, Shesterkin cleaned everything up. They won 6-0. It was like, oh, here they are, on their way again. But they never played well defensively as a 5-man unit. Guys didn't come back. Their gaps were terrible. I mean, their coverage was bad. They had essentially no forecheck. He did not do a good job this year. And I think the Rangers tried to they did. They gave him the entire season to try and to get it right, because they understand I think they understood the hierarchy, understood how tough a group this is to coach. And, when it happens over and over and over again, you have to look at the guys who are in the room. And so I think they wanted to give him the entire year to try and get it right. And they just never, it just never coalesced. I appreciate that. I think I think it's unfortunate though, that in a sense that they didn't make a move and elevate Pekka into that role, so that there'd be a little bit more information about Mike Pekka. He's never been a head coach at any at a level like this, and he's never So, are you going to turn a team over to a coach to a coach who's never been the head guy? I don't know. I think that I would have been intrigued to see Pekka running the show for a while.
Yeah, we can get into some candidates, but I thought Fox had a really good quote on Breakup Day just about how this core is heading toward their fourth head coach since 2021, since David Quinn was let go in 2021. He said, it's hard not to look at us as players and say, why is that happening? We seem to have a lot of success. And then, I don't know, it turns. I don't think us as players at any point didn't like Lavi or thought his message wasn't getting through. It just seemed the execution of it was not there. I think we want to be able to come in with a coach that's here for as long as we're all here, even outlast us as players, because that means we're having a lot of success. And I'm wondering how, I mean, I know how it's perceived from where I'm sitting, but I'm just wondering how this is perceived by the rest of the NHL. I mean, either of you can answer it, but what sort of conclusions do you draw watching the same core go through their third coach in such a short amount of time? And does their success over the previous years mask it or make it look less bad?
I think they're talented players. And when it's going well, it's going well. Everybody eats. I mean, it's easy. What's the judge of character? Not when things are going well. Right. So, Adam Fox, I think, is a very good person. I've spent some time with him. I think he's a brilliant hockey mind. I think with what he has physically to work with, he's overachieved in a lot of ways. That's how talented and smart he is. And I think he's a thoughtful kid. And I think he's probably bang on, but that's just you're making a lot of money on the back end. And I liked sort of how he did get better at times, a lot of times, especially offensively as the season went on. That decor the decor as a whole got worse. And who's that on? Now, is that on the coaching staff or who they let go? I don't know, but you've got enough cachet now to speak your mind and get in there and figure out ways or give it to your decor. I just think he's saying the right things, but he's just such a nice guy. I'm sure there's things he could say, or I wish he would say behind closed doors. Maybe he does. That no one goes into MSG now nervous at all about how many ice packs we're going to need after the game. And I'm not saying that's how this team's built or should be built, but you have to play harder. There are no hitters. There's just games where they put the gear on and they play. And teams are going to come in there, especially after you won a President's Trophy. Even if you're having a down year, look at your lineup and say, this is going to be a big game. We need to physically take it to this team. That's what you do against good teams. That's what we did when we went into Pittsburgh or when we went into Washington. Any team that had that skill, even if they were hard to play against, you had to match it. They don't do that. They didn't do it all year. That's why you can't defend. That's all it is. It's a will. I didn't defend a lick in my life until I got to pro hockey, right? It's not like I just magically learned how to defend in the best league in the world. It's a mindset. It's a will. I thank John Tortorella for those things. And, there's so much talent there. That's what just frustrates me so much. And I get pretzel brain again because I can't believe it happens.
I don't think there's as much talent as has generally been perceived the last few years. I mean, you look, there is talent all around the league, and they have. I don't think they're as necessarily talented even as maybe San Jose in their top league. No, I'm talking about the top players.
There's 5 forwards and 2D that should be, when they're at their best, extremely talented. You have Panarin, Lafreniere when he's at his best can dominate. Zibanejad has dominated.
I get annoyed at that too, Brian.
You're going to put Lafreniere. Wait, you're putting Lafreniere up as an extremely talented player in this league? I don't think so.
I think he should be, Larry.
He should be. He isn't. Yeah,
but he's not.
Well,
I don't think they're like. I don't think maybe San Jose was a bit of a stretch.
But we have some young players.
I think it was a little bit. Just a bit of a stretch.
But I just don't think they're as talented as they think they are. That they can't win on talent alone. They have no chance to win on talent alone.
But
they're not that talented. They're not that fast. They're not that quick.
Right.
So, and of course I agree that they're a walk in the park to play against. I mean, that's the first thing. But I also think that comes from like this conceit that they are more talented than they are, because they're outskated all the time.
Okay, right. So, but here's the thing: when they're at their best, is my point. Like, what do they say about Crosby? He's a first liner with the fourth liner mentality, right? And you wouldn't question Nathan MacKinnon's work ethic. Obviously, his talent's there for everyone to see. And I'm not saying that the Rangers have either of those guys, but I've seen Mika for several seasons pour it in the net, flying up and down the ice. I've seen Chris Kreider score 50. I've seen Adam Fox be a wizard on the ice. Keandre Miller, we're not even scratching the surface with him. I'm saying it's between the ears, and maybe you are too. I'm God-given ability. These guys are right up there. And then you have the guy in net. When they're all at their best, they're winning the Metro Division.
Yeah.
Like they're going to win the Metro. They're going to win some rounds. That's talent.
Yeah. My biggest issue is, and I've said this before, the two of the last 3 seasons when they did go to the conference final, I don't think that just the general public gave the Rangers enough credit for what they had done in both of those respective seasons. So I kind of lean on that side, where I do feel like for some reason with this group, they don't get the credit that they deserve, I think, on certain aspects, especially on their conference final runs. I just don't think that they were properly, given the credit that they deserved. But I do think that it is between the years for sure. And Larry, I asked Drury this question myself, but I'll ask you too. I asked Drury, after watching this team go through Quinn, Gallant, and now Laviolette, is a first-time coach an option, and what does he think this team needs? He did say he's not ruling out a first-time coach and that he's simply looking for the right fit. So my question, Larry, is what do you think the right fit should look like?
Well, the right fit is someone who's going to command respect from the start, but someone who is going to trust in young players. The Rangers have to trust their scouting staffs. They have to trust their development staffs. They have to trust their young players. So the next coach can't be someone who loads up the veterans with ice time. There's an imbalance. He generally plays 6 players, 6 forwards, cuts down to 4D. There has to be, I think, an emphasis on bringing the younger guys in giving the younger guys more responsibility, I think that's going to be a key ingredient of what this next coach does, because the Rangers need their young players. The Rangers need production from the young players. They're not ornaments here. Like Brennan Othmann should have been playing in the top 6 from the time he was up. They're going to need Brennan Othmann, and so obviously Will Cooley needs Will Cooley was given a taste, but he should have been on the first power play. So that's the approach I think the next coach is going to have to take. He's going to have to trust his young players and give the young players more responsibility. Obviously, he's going to have to have a 200 by 85 foot approach. I mean, he's going to have to be able to teach defense, or have an assistant coach or an associate coach who can teach defense, because there was none, as we've discussed this year. But I want a fresh look. I don't want someone who's coached 3 or 4 or 5 teams to come in and try and give them a jolt for 2 years, and so in 2 more years you're looking again. I want a younger kind of guy who can who will be what Adam Fox has suggested, someone who is going to outlive their players on this team. They need a coach who is going to be here for like 5 years, at least 5 years. And, when the last decade, or, coming out of the canceled season into the hard cap, the Rangers had 3 coaches for 13 years, and they were a stable organization, and that's why they were successful. They were, they had stability in the organization. They had stability behind the bench. There were very different people behind the bench. First Tom Rennie, then Tortorella, and then Alain Vigneault. And the team succeeded with each one of those different personalities, and they built and they built and they built because there was something to build on. When you're switching coaching staffs every 2 years, there's nothing to build on. New systems, there's new personalities, there's new idiosyncrasies that you're always dealing with, and so they need to hire a coach who's going to, the next coach they hire is one they should have in place for 5 years.
Any names out there that either of you want to endorse? And I was actually thinking about this. This is probably the most daunting job opening in the NHL right now. No? I certainly, I know it's the Rangers. I know it's in the Rangers, and that will always, everybody that says, oh, yeah, players are never going to want to come to New York, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a believer in that at all. But this is no easy task walking into this right now. And I think that could scare. It's like, I don't think David Carlisle, is that how you pronounce it? David Carl. I don't think he'll be interested. I don't think he wants that to be his introduction in the NHL. Maybe he does, but I don't know. It just feels like a really, really daunting job at hand for whoever is going to step into it.
I think if David Carl leaves DU, he's going elsewhere. There's a couple I would have him picked to go to that would fit nicely. Well, I mean, Larry, you just described John Cooper and how the Lightning.
Wouldn't that be great?
Right.
Well, there's 28 or 29 teams that would take John Cooper right now out of the 32.
Oh, yeah.
He ain't going anywhere. He is.
You need to have your own John Cooper. You need to find, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I mean,
there's just not a lot of
your own guy, right?
And he's a guy he's cracked the whip before. He seems like just this fun guy all the time. You don't win that much unless you have the buy-in. And AV came in here from Vancouver. He had coached in Montreal, but he was, known for Vancouver, had success there, couldn't get over the hump, came in here, started like 2-6-1 because we were a circus show going all over the continent and internationally. But his message didn't vary. Like, he just was like, this is what we're doing. And he made changes to the lineup, and he moved guys up and down, and he moved Callahan around, who was our captain. And we're like, if we can move him around, we're all sort of – but the message itself was pretty simple. So even when you did move around and have to play wing or your lines changed, the message was the same. And we figured it out from there. And the second half of the year, we took off. And he had them going again the next year. Unfortunately, they lost to us in Tampa, which was a totally different team that I was – Tampa's evolved. I remember getting to Tampa, and this is a John Cooper plug. I was like, when are we going to start defending? I couldn't figure it out. We're in the second round of the playoffs, and when are we going to have the emphasis? Because that's how my whole career went. AV and Torts, and it was defending and this and that. And he's like, we got to get it going. We got to get it out faster. And that was just that kind of sort of change, shifted the whole league. But he's adapted each time. They couldn't get over the hump a couple times. He changed everything. He brought in a guy that would be a good fit, I think, who played here, and has been on staff with Tampa for a while. And Jeff Alpern, he lives hockey, breathes hockey, he works extremely hard. Him and John Muse would probably be the 2 hardest working guys ever. They'll never see their families. They'll stay at home forever.
I've heard such great things about Dan Muse, just from all over. Yeah, people just will throw in and just be like, oh, how great is Muse? He's the guy that always keeps score of all their competitive games that they do on the ice during practice and stuff. He's the one that's, his voice can carry through 6 rinks too.
Loves to work. But Halpern's similar. Halpern's constantly asking questions of other people and constantly trying to tweak and change things. And he has his philosophies on how things should go. And if Tampa was ever, I don't know if they'll let him go or what his contract deal is, but that's a guy you'd look at.
We heard from almost every player on breakup day on Monday, but the biggest story of the day was naturally Chris Kreider, who is someone we hadn't heard from in a while, might I add. He did give us a laundry list of injuries that he's dealt with this season that I feel like explain a lot of his season. He told us he spent the first half of the year trying to figure out his back problem, which he did talk to us about in great detail around November, I think it was. He said it was back spasms and identified all the different places in his back that were experiencing issues. And then he said he had a weird illness that made its way to his inner ear and caused vertigo coming out of Christmas break. And then after 4 Nations, he said he was finally feeling back in a rhythm, and then he suffers an injury to his left hand in the first game back from 4 Nations. And it sounded like it might need some work done in the off season. So like I said, I feel like that explains a lot of his on-ice struggles this season, but he obviously also addressed his future with the Rangers. He said, I mean, this is home for me. This is the organization that gave me an opportunity to live out my dream. I've developed so many incredible relationships and grown up and spent so much time in the area. So obviously this is where I want to be. And this is the group I want to help in whatever fashion and win hockey games. Larry, simply put, what do you think will happen this summer with Chris Kreider?
I'm not sure. The injuries obviously compromised his abilities, but my question really is, well, why was he playing then?
Right.
No, seriously, and this is something the Rangers have done for a bit, even going back to last year's playoffs. Jacob Trouba had injured his ankle toward the end of the season, had missed a chunk of time, and then came back last week and then played in the playoffs. Didn't play well. He was obviously compromised. And at breakup day last year, he said that he had been playing on a broken ankle. Of course, that was now, and then of course, like an hour later, he tried to walk it back. That was the first, post 2024 incident with Trouba, where, he was basically saying, hey, I was playing on a broken ankle. And then I guess, someone said, well, this doesn't sound so good. Well, no, it was healed. But my point is,
we tweeted it after he said it, and
right.
Then PR came back in and was like, "We just wanted to clarify."
Right, he didn't play on a broken ankle.
But the thing is, the funny thing about it is we all just quoted, we just tweeted exactly what he said, so that's how everybody else took it, So it's kind of like we just wrote exactly what he said. Like, sorry,
Right. So, but the point I was making is that they thought that Trouba at 60%, 50% was a better option than the healthy scratch, who,
right.
Zach Jones say.
Zach Jones.
So they went with a compromise. They went with a player they knew was not 100%, and they thought that part of him was going to be more effective. They did that with Housley last year when they brought him back in, right? They knew he wasn't 100%. How could he be 100%? But then they were playing Housley, who was compromised, instead of whomever they were scratching. Now this year, Kreider is compromised because he has 18 different ailments, and he's going out and playing. Why was he playing? Listen, I mean, he didn't play well. It's not as if he was overcoming all of these ailments to lead them, and he wasn't playing well.
Right.
So to me, it's strange to me that that they wouldn't have sat him down for hey, get right, or your season's over, get surgery, whatever it is. I don't know. I know players try and talk them, players talk their way in, but it's the coach or the manager or whoever it is who makes the decision about who plays. And that's just something, that's just something that, an additional thing that I thought of yesterday when Kreider was talking. It was like, well, this isn't unique to Kreider. This is what they kind of do. I don't know.
Same with Braden Schneider.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know where Chris will be next year. I don't know, but I do know that if you want to make a change, he's the biggest guy out there to make a change for, right? I mean, Zibanejad has the no move clause.
Artemi
has the no move clause. They're not trading Adam Fox, So if you want to clear some cap space and you want to change the dynamic a little bit, then Kreider is the low hanging fruit, right? I would love to see Chris Kreider finish his career as a Ranger. I would love to see him bounce back next year, score 35, and be a presence, on the ice for the Rangers. Who wants him to go? But he didn't have a good year, and there are only so many alternatives that the general manager has to change the team.
Just to add another player to that list is Braden Schneider, who had surgery on a torn labrum in his shoulder, but he said that he's been dealing with it since the 22-23 season. He said that it was sore in 2022-23 and then, started to really bother him last season. And then they said this year that it was really bad and that it would cause problems down the line if he didn't get it fixed now. So it worked out that they didn't make the playoffs, and he took the last 2 games of the season off to get this surgery, and he said he was very confident he'll be ready by next season. But yeah, it was just pretty daunting to hear that he's been dealing with it since 2022-23.
That explains his season entirely. That explains the lack of physicality.
Why, what? Brian? Brian's like, no, it doesn't.
No. This is all over the league. This is every player. I got to stop you. Like, guys play through things all the time. Okay. I don't like the whole, this is my list of injuries at the end of the season.
No, everybody does it.
Now, Kreider's unique because it was such a dip, and I could tell with the back. I've gone through the back thing, but speed wasn't my game wasn't built around the speed. Yeah. The labrum thing, I don't have a labrum in my left shoulder. I haven't since high school. Like, it hurts sometimes, and trust me, it's hard to hold a guy out if you have to hold a guy out and you get in a situation. Yeah. There's a number of things that go. It doesn't body checking, cross checking. It hurts a little as long as your rotator cuff's okay.
Yeah. No, yeah. He said that some days were better than others. Like, sometimes it would hurt, but he did say this season in particular that he felt hesitant. That knowing it in the back of his mind that it did impact the way he approached the game.
Well, and that's the mental part. Like, he'll get fixed and hopefully feels great because he's got a high ceiling too. But you can't. It doesn't. A lot of guys have a lot of things wrong. You go under you get in that tube and they start taking pictures, hips, knees. Everybody's got something, and you just have to figure out a way to remain effective. You're not supposed to play several seasons and play in playoff rounds and just feel good. So you need to understand it's supposed to hurt.
Kind of on a similar note to Kreider, Mika Zibanejad said that mentally what he went through the first few months of the season was the toughest thing he'd ever been through in his career. There's obviously speculation that there could be some uncomfortable conversations with him this summer if the Rangers want to move him. He'd have to waive his no move clause, as Larry pointed out. But the Post's own Andrew Crane actually spoke to Zibanejad during the last week of the season, and he made a pretty firm statement. He said, "I know what my contract says. Both parties agreed to it. And like I said, I think I've earned it. Until it's time to adjust it, I have no plans of going. I've invested a lot of years here." Brian, does a quote like that make you think that things could get ugly if the Rangers do choose to go down that route, or how do you gauge that situation hearing that quote?
If you look at the structure of his deal, he can say those things. He can say whatever he wants. You can't buy it out. You can't move it. But again, he needs to understand by giving him that deal, they've given him a ton of responsibility that he didn't come even close to this year. The effort, the physical effort he put forth for the first 40 games of the season was abysmal.
Yeah.
It was abysmal. There was no effort. There was no stopping. There was no skating hard. There was no battle. And you're getting, 8 or 9 million every July 1.
Yeah.
There's a certain responsibility that comes with that. And you need to play well because there's 21 or 22 other guys in there. They're doing everything they can to live out their dream. You are too. If you don't want it anymore and you checked out, you owe it to them as well. Maybe move or waive or whatever. If you don't want to waive, then live up to the way you can play. This guy could be a superstar. He has been in the past. He did earn that. Him getting 40 goals and making 8.5 is a deal. That's a great deal. Him doing that, it's an albatross.
I would much rather Zibanejad say, I want to be here because I can be this part of the solution. I want to be here when we get back to the final, instead of I know what my contract says. If I'm a Rangers fan, if I'm a Rangers employee, if I'm a Rangers teammate, I don't want to hear that's what my contract says. I want to hear I want to be here because I want to be part of this. I want to ride down the Canyon of Heroes. That's why I want to be here. It's not because of some words on a paper that I signed 4 years ago. That didn't impress me. Not at all. Not at all. And again, I can't put myself in, I'm not Mika. So I don't want to, you know what, let's leave this alone. But I don't know what he went through. That's what did he go through? Because he was getting a lot of outside criticism. Was that it? Was he unnerved because of the Goodrow move? Was he unnerved because of the whole Trouba scenario? I mean, what happened to him? I don't think anything happened to him. So again, it's to me again reflective of a team that's just very, very mentally weak.
No one knows what anyone's going through. And I don't know what you guys have gone through in the last week. I'm not saying to be an insensitive jerk. We're talking about, this is a different box over here. We're talking about hockey and performance.
Right.
That stuff, that's your friends, your family. Sometimes your teammates can pick you up with those things. I'm talking about the hockey player. Nothing about the kid. Yeah. Nothing about if he's liked. I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
I know guys like the guy. I know everybody wants to be happy. We're talking about ice hockey here. Play better. What are we doing? Why is everything so emotional? It's a friggin' CW sitcom.
It really was. It really was. That's the point. I think that the reason why Larry tends to move in that direction is because so much of this season has been about that. So much of this season has been enraptured by some of it has been very trivial. Some things that are just, they're part of the gig. It's part of the job. It's part of the way that most seasons in the NHL go for all 32 teams in the league.
I've never heard it as much about feelings as I did this year.
Yeah.
Right? Honestly.
And look, I'm from a different generation.
From beginning to end.
I hear it though. I see it a little bit differently, I think, than probably you guys do. But I think that it was alarming how much of it was part of this season. I think is what was so jarring about it, is that so much of it just became about feelings and the way and just the feeling in the room and the way that the treatment and what these players were claiming. And it was a lot. It was a lot to sift through, but it was kind of like, what about the hockey?
You bend over backwards and try and make everyone's feelings fixed.
Yeah, you're never going to
I
get
guarantee
anywhere.
you, even if they succeed, they still don't make the playoffs.
Brian's like,
what are we talking about? They're still a bad team. All right, we got that talk out of the way. We didn't practice today. Oh, we still can't defend. What are we doing?
All right, well, kind of going off of this topic, the other aspect of the season I wanted to discuss, which was a huge topic of conversation on Breakup Day, along with, I mean, by the way, just a side note, all the Goudreau, Trouba stuff from the offseason was very much so a prominent talking point on Breakup Day. Almost every player spoke on it. I mean, we've been writing and reporting on it that it's been an issue since day one of training camp, but it was they basically confirmed everything that everybody's reporting all season about how much it affected the locker room, just based on the way everybody talked about it on Breakup Day. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was communication within the organization, because that proved to be a point from the players as well. We obviously had the whole thing with Calvin DeHaan that I was present and accounted for and reported on. I'll just say for context that outburst was not unexpected. It had clearly been brewing for a while, and it simply boiled over that day and became such a spectacle that Peter Baugh of The Athletic, who was the other reporter who was with me, and we were obligated to report on it at that point. And I told him that to his face at the time. Obviously, he wasn't happy that he was quoted, but the full picture had to be painted. And everybody is all good on that front, by the way. There was no hard feelings or anything, but I was able to follow up on the questions I wanted to ask him that day before the Rangers intervened. And I asked if he was under the impression he would definitely play when they traded for him. His response was, let me tell you, Calvin's a funny man. It might have just been a teleprompter answer, frankly. Just welcome to the team, that kind of thing. They alluded to the fact that I was part of a trade for a Ranger who was a good Ranger for a long time, meaning Ryan Lindgren. I was told I was going to be a part of the team moving forward and get an opportunity. And on the communication in general, he said, I mean, I think it could have been better. I was never really given a direct answer as to why. In an hour or so, I'll probably get some answers. I think it can always be better. I'm not blaming the coaches. I'm not blaming anyone, but I think it can just be better in general. Brian, I'm curious what you made of that whole situation.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't tell him. Like, I'm sure they told him he wasn't playing, but I know a guy that signed a 5-year contract in the offseason. And then the coach called him and said, you're my 7th guy on D. I don't really know why we signed you. And that's communication. The coach is going to tell him that. He did not have a great tenure in the place that he signed. So these things happen. There's a disconnect between management and coaching staff on certain guys or how much they want certain guys. Unfortunately, I think for DeHaan, it was trading Ryan Lindgren to get something in terms of a draft pick back, and he was sort of a piece because there's a salary cap and there's roster limits. If they told him that, or they looked to move him, he looked okay. I mean, he is what he is. I'd be frustrated too. I'd pop off at that point too. That's a long time to not play when you think
19 straight games, I think it was. He went 2-0-1.
It's a long time to play when you play your first 3. When you play 3 games, they win the first 2 by shutout. Then they lose to Washington in overtime, 3-2. You're on for 4 goals for and none against, and then you don't play again.
Yeah.
That and
rattle it off.
There were a couple of guys injured. Fox was out, so so they had a couple of guys coming back. But honestly, the eye test. They were a better, more cohesive unit with DeHaan playing those few games than they were with Carson Soucy or Vakanainen when he came back in. And so if I were Calvin DeHaan, I would be asking those questions too. It's like, wait a second, it's not as if, it's not as if they're winning without me. In fact, they went into a dive.
Yeah.
They went to another tailspin. And that was the other thing. We can agree or disagree on how much impact Trouba had at the start of the season and the Goodrow issue had at the start of the season, and whether it should have had impact or not. But the team was way beyond that by March. I mean, honestly, no one was talking about Jacob Trouba in March. Nobody was talking about Barclay Goodrow in March. That had been dealt with, poorly, but it had been dealt with. And then they win 3 out of 12 games. So it's not only, it wasn't only, Barclay Goodrow. It wasn't only that. It was their deficiency as a team. They went 3-6-3 when they had the wild card in their grasp.
Right.
They blew a 2-goal lead to Ottawa. And,
don't go down the list. It was so bad. There were so many.
Their collapse at the end had nothing to do with the issues that undermined them the first half of the season. It was just, no one really addressed that. No one said, yeah, but all of this stuff happened and we were still terrible at the end of the season. So. What? What?
No, it's true. It's true. It's funny because it's true. That's why. Yeah, I mean, I have some other quotes here and stuff, but I'm sure we'll have another episode at some point coming up. I think an hour-long therapy session is enough. I think we should cap it here.
You know what my mom always said, Larry and Molly? Always since I was a little kid?
What?
Excuses are failures. Means you failed and you need an excuse. So they're
put that on the locker room.
That's it. She told it to me recently too. It was about someone else. It wasn't
even me.
It wasn't me. Thank God.
Alrighty. Well, Brian, Larry, wouldn't have been able to have gotten through this season without you. And all of our Ranger fans, friends listening, thank you guys so much for sticking it out with us this season. All of your messages, the amount of messages that I got of people saying, I need a therapy session, when's the next Up in the Blue Seats episode coming out? It meant a lot. It made me feel like, we were helping in some sort with this miserable season, truly. So thank you so much for listening and subscribing, and leave us a comment. Sum up this Ranger season in 3 words or less. See if you can do it. Give us a like, subscribe, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon. Have a good one, guys.